Hi, today I'm going to show you how to knit this brioche true color knitting. Let's get started. Hi, first of all, have you guys watched my video with brioche one color knitting? If not, please go down to the description box. There's a link. Please watch that video first. If you watch that video, maybe it's easier for you to understand with the two color brioche knitting. Okay, so you need two colors. I use gray as main color and pink for contrast color. Also, you need double point needle or circular needle. You cannot use regular needle. Okay? Cast on with main color. The number of the cast should be even number, which is multiple of 2. I made 30. And this is just a sample project. Okay, so I'm not making anything. So cast on, it's really up to your project. Okay, if it's, wider project, you can add more cast. Okay? After the cast on, set up row with contrast color, which is pink for me, and knit 2 first. And I want you to remember the second stitch I am going to make right now. I'm using end yarn as well, so it looks like 2 stitch there, but I'm using with the end yarn, so don't count 2. It's only 1 stitch on the second stitch. Okay, and anyway, after knit 2 you have to repeat yarn front and slip 1 purlwise, keep the yarn front, then knit 1. So the width and bracket is repeat. So yarn front, slip 1 purlwise, keep the yarn front, then knit 1. You have to do this until the end. This is setup row. And there is even number for cats, so you can finish with knit 1. Okay, keep the yarn front and knit 1. There you go, 2 stitch left, and yarn front, slip 1 purlwise, then knit 1, then finish. Now I want you to look at the position of the working yarn. The pink yarn is on your left side because you just finished, and where is the gray yarn, which is actually on your right side. But the gray yarn is on your right side, which means you can't use gray, but you have to use gray in next row. Then why don't you push the project to the other side so you can use gray yarn? This is the reason why for this project you have to use double point needle or circular needle, because you have to push if the working yarn spread like this. Okay, please remember. Okay, but now you're working on the gray, and then working yarn goes towards to left, then the pink and gray yarn meets. So I will tell you what's going on later. Okay, So now I will use gray yarn. Then now I want you to look at the second stitch. Okay, that looks a little bit like two stitch, but I told you I used the end tail, so this is actually one independent stitch. Okay, so if the second stitch is independent stitch like that, remember this is going to be purl row. Okay, and the third one is brioche stitch. Okay, so please look at the video carefully. Okay, row number 1 with main color, which is gray, and knit 1. Always knit 1 at the beginning. Okay, then after knit 1, if it's purl row, you start repeating of yarn front, slip 1 PURLWISE. Okay, then you have to make brioche purl 2 together, but before that you have to wrap the working yarn, okay, around the right needle, just like that, and still yarn front. Okay, it's not just a yarn over, you have to wrap like that and still keep the yarn front, then brioche purl 2 together there. Then yarn is still out front. Okay, so keep the yarn front, then slip the one independent stitch purlwise like that, and then again before brioche purl 2 together, you have to wrap the working yarn around the right needle and keep the yarn front, then brioche purl 2 together. Okay, one more time, slip purlwise, wrap, then brioche purl 2 together. Okay, slip purlwise, wrap, brioche purl 2 together. Okay, you have to keep doing until last one stitch. Here comes end of the row number 1. One more repeat, slip, wrap, brioche purl 2 together, and there's one stitch left, and that's actually just a knit sew yarn at the back, then knit 1. This is end of row number 1. Now working yarn comes together, okay, which means you don't have to push the project, you just have to turn the project as usual. Okay, you know, you have to push the project only if the working yarn spreads. Okay, so now you have to use the pink yarn because you just finished the main color gray. But if you forgot which yarn you're going to use in next row, just check the color of the yarn. Obviously, gray yarn is way more than pink in previous row, which means you just finished with gray. So next row should be with pink. That's how you figured it out. Okay, now you have to check second stitch. Is it independent stitch or brioche stitch? It is actually independent stitch on second row. The third, that's brioche. So independent stitch on second, which means this is purl row again. Okay, so the repeat starts right after the first knit. Okay, that's how you find out. Rule number 2 with contrast color, which is pink. Again, the first stitch always knit. And you already checked the second stitch. Second stitch was independent stitch. So this is going to be a purl row. So repeat off, yarn front, slip 1 purlwise, wrap, not the yarn over, wrap, and keep the yarn front, then brioche purl 2 together. Same as row number 1. Okay? Now keep the yarn front, slip 1 purlwise, wrap, then brioche purl 2 together. And you gotta do exactly same thing as row number 1. Repeat until last 1 stitch, and last 1 stitch is just the regular knit. Okay, it's easy. Okay, so this is going to be end of row number 2. There you go, just the regular knit. So yarn at the back and knit 1. Then now I just turned, but I came back and wait a minute, I have to check the working yarn. There we go, spreads, right? The gray yarn which you will be using is the other side. So you have to push the project towards to the yarn you will be using in next row, which is gray. Okay, so obviously pink is way more than gray because you just use pink yarn in previous row. Okay, so now check the second stitch. Okay, so what's the second stitch? It's not independent stitch, it's actually brioche stitch. Brioche stitch is 1 independent stitch and then yarn over on top of it. You know, kind of come close. Okay, which means the repeating starts after the brioche stitch. Okay, so knit 1 first and brioche knitted together on the second stitch, then repeat starts. And this is knit row. Okay, if the second stitch is brioche, this is going to be knit row. Okay, so knit 1, always knit 1 to start, then this is brioche. So brioche knitted together. Yarn is still at the back, okay? Just like regular knitted together. And then now repeat starts, but this is knit row, okay? Repeat off, yarn front, slip 1 purlwise, then keep the yarn front, then now brioche knitted together, not the purl. Okay, one more time, yarn front, slip 1 purlwise, keep the yarn at the front, then brioche knitted together. You have to repeat, okay? If the second stitch is brioche, this is going to be knit row. Okay, now I want to talk about if you forget what you're doing, because sometimes you get called and you have to do chores middle of your knitting, which I hated, but it happened. Then when you come back, now you don't remember what you were doing. So this is how you figured it out. Okay, where is the working yarn? The pink is at the back and gray is in the middle. So Okay, obviously you're doing something with gray yarn. This is gray yarn row. Okay, but is it knit row or purl row? Okay, so now you have to figure it out. This is knit or purl row. So this is gray yarn row. So please look for the independent stitch you just made with gray yarn. Okay, so that's the independent gray stitch, which is actually knit. Okay, it's really tough to see, but it's knit. And the purl row is in between those two knit stitch, right? That's a definitely knit row. So that's you figured it out. You're using gray yarn, and this is made of knit row, which means you have to repeat yarn front, slip one purlwise, keep the yarn front, then brioche knit two together. There we go. That's how you figured it out if you forget what you're doing. So this is continue for row 3. Okay, the yarn front, slip one, and brioche knit two together. You just keep within bracket until last 2 stitch. There you go. And there's only 2 stitch left. Yarn front, slip one, then just knit 1 there. Okay, there we go. And then now working yarn comes together, so turn the project. Then next row should be with pink, and what's the second stitch? Brioche stitch. So it's going to be knit row. Again, next row with pink contrast color and knitting row. That's how you figured it out. There we go. Row number 4, contrast color. Knit 1, and did you just remember brioche stitch on second? So this is going to be knit row. So you just have to make brioche knit two together, no yarn front yet. Okay, there you go. Then from third stitch, you have to start repeat of yarn front, slip one purl, then keep the yarn front, brioche knit it together. And you just have to keep doing this until last 2 stitch. Same as row number 3. And again, I'm just telling you the pink independent is knit. So again, it's pretty much confirmed that you're knitting row. Okay, you have to remember those rule, pretty much it. Okay, so this is it pretty much. The pattern for brioche 2 color has 2 methods, which is knitting row or purl row. Okay, the technique you use is pretty much same thing except the brioche knit two together or brioche purl two together. Okay, and the way you do the yarn front and wrap is a little bit different, so you really have to be careful which side you're knitting. side means, the knitting or purl side. Then you just keep knitting until you hit your desired length, right? So you're looking at the pink side, which is actually wrong side, okay? And the other side is gray. And I'm actually telling you which side I will be knitting next. And as you can see, there was a more gray stitch on the needle. So it's going to be pink, and you're facing to pink side, right? So this will be pink and knitting row. That's how I actually figured it out. Okay, so again, you always have to check second stitch to find out whether knit row or purl row. Okay, there you go. I'm starting knit one to start. There you go, brioche on second stitch. So this is going to be knit row. Okay, summary. Number one, the color changes every row. Number two, check the working yarn position. If two together, turn the project. If separate, push the project towards to the yarn you will be using in next. Number three, check the second stitch. If independent stitch on second, it's going to be purl row. If brioche stitch on second stitch, it's going to be knit row. And I'm going to tell you how to figure it out without looking at the second stitch. Right now, you will be using gray, and you're looking at the pink side. So this is going to be opposite. So this is going to be purl row. There you go. That's a purl method, right? Pick one and wrap and purl two together. Okay? But probably if this is first time for you to knit, maybe check the second stitch. That's the best way to find out. Okay? Now bind off. Bind off rule on the right side with main color. So this is the side you're looking at, and should be knit row, which means brioche stitch on the second stitch. Then change the needle to one size up. I was using 4mm needle, so now I'm using 5mm. Okay, so knit one, and next is brioche. So brioche knitted together, then bind off. And even though you change the needle, you bind off kind of loosely, okay? And next stitch is purl, so purl one, then bind off. No more yarn front and all that, just a regular. If it's knit, yarn back, and if it's purl, yarn front. That's it, okay? Just like, the knit one and purl one, bind off. Okay? I just finished. Okay, right side, gray knitting side, wrong side, pink knitting. It's very fun knitting. Okay, maybe you can use this for, dog sweater neck rib. It's gonna be fun. Okay, so that's about it for today. And then next video will be brioche knitting in round. Okay, enjoy knitting.